Good afternoon, Jamaica. Wagwan mi charji dem. I am Veronica Chiskevich, the host of Facebook Live, Consular Conversations Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us today, Wednesday, June 21st. My guest today is Stephen Nicholson. He is a second tour consular officer working in the NIV, the Non-Immigrant Visa section at U.S. Embassy Kingston. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Veronica.
I just want to encourage everybody to share this stream with their followers on all of our streaming platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. It's at US Embassy JA. That's at US Embassy JA. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for joining us right now. We're really looking forward to getting to your visa questions, and this is going to be a visa-heavy session. In particular, we'll be talking about student visas, but we are, of course, happy to answer IV and NIV questions. We've got an NIV expert here. Just a couple of notes at the top. We cannot and it will not answer specific questions about your individual case or application in this public forum. We don't have access to that information at our fingertips, and you're also entitled to privacy about your own situation. If you do have specific questions about your case and you've come into the embassy and would like them answered, please write for American Citizen Services, Kingston ACS at state.gov. For non-immigrant visa services, please write Kingston NIV at state.gov. For immigrant visa services and questions, Kingston IV at state.gov. And any fraud protection services or DNA inquiries, Kingston FPU at state.gov. Stephen, do you want to share a little bit about what's going on in the NIV section right now? What kinds of visas are you adjudicating? What's going on there?
Sure. So thanks, Veronica. Great to be here, and happy to answer questions that people have later on. Right now in our non-immigrant visa section, we are actually processing all the different types of visas that we issue. And so we're continuing to come out of the lull that we had after COVID, and we have more and more people at work and who are busy adjudicating visas every day. So we're doing visitor visas, we're doing student visas, we're doing work visas, and right now we're moving into a season during the summer where we process a lot of Jamaican students. And so we're going to talk a little bit more today about student visas. So some of our favorite people, Jamaicans who are going up to study in the US, when we really love the student season. And so we look forward to having a lot of them come this summer. Also, teachers who are going to work in the US are having a lot of appointments now. And of course, as always, we always do a variety of work visas and our visitor visa, our B1, B2, the most popular visa, and we have appointments for those as well, booked throughout the summer. So yeah, super busy and super excited to see big crowds of people coming out every morning.
Yep, it sounds like you are doing the full alphabet of visas.
We got them all. We got them all.
So I have a few announcements throughout the program, but I'm just gonna jump in right away because we already have a lot of questions about student visas and visiting visas.
Okay, cool.
So Alicia is asking, if you are approved for a student visa and you previously had a visiting visa, is the visitor visa automatically canceled?
Oh, no, it's not automatically canceled. It's a great question. Mm-hmm. And so one of the cool things about US visas, so the visiting visas, is that you can have different types of visas. So every visa that you have is for a specific purpose or a specific reason. And so you can have different types of visas. It's possible at the same time. And so if you do wind up with multiple visas, you might have a work visa and a visiting visa or a student visa. And it's just important that you point out when you're entering the United States exactly why you're there and what your purpose of travel is that time. And that way you're entered into the right kind of status when you go to the US.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. You have passed the
first
question.
All right, that's good. Pressure's off. All right.
However, I'm just going to add on that
Yeah.
because you are now in the non-immigrant visa section. I am interviewing immigrant visa
Right.
applicants. And so I'm just going to put out there that if you come in for an immigrant visa interview, and especially if it looks like the stars are aligning and the puzzle pieces are there for your immigrant visa, do not be surprised if one of us pulls out our big, scary, heavy stamp and cancels a visiting visa or J visa or other type of non-immigrant visa that you have in your passport, because you are not able to be a non-immigrant and an immigrant simultaneously. And that means you actually cannot have a valid visiting visa or other type of non-immigrant visa and an immigrant visa in your passport that is valid at the same time. So just a little
also
caveat
correct.
on
All
that.
right, good job.
All
Yeah, we
right,
both got it
nice.
right.
We
Yes,
are
yes.
totally
Nice
killing
work.
this. Okay. All right. So, related question, speaking of the intersect between immigrant and non-immigrant visas, if you are on a filing, meaning you have an immigrant visa petition that is in the works for you, can you still apply for a visiting visa?
Sure. So you definitely can. And again, so it's important to know that almost all of our non-immigrant visas you have to overcome what we call the presumption of immigrant intent. All right. And so if you are being filed for, if someone's filing an immigrant petition for you, then it's kind of obvious that you have, intent to immigrate to the U.S. However, it may still be possible for you to have a visiting visa, a B1, B2 visa at the same time. But again, it is not something that's automatic and it's not guaranteed. So it is possible, but you would have to then apply in the same manner as anybody else and be able to overcome that presumption of your intent to immigrate on that visa at that time.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to make an announcement separate of this, but there's a question that hits this nail on the head. Anna K is wondering, how long is it taking right now to renew visas if I send them in through the mail? Can you tell us what's going on with the interview waiver process and timelines or sort of set the expectations for that?
Sure. So great question again. So appreciate that. We're doing loads and loads of what we call interview waiver program renewals or visas. And so certain people, when you are going through the visa application process, you answer a series of questions on the website as you apply, and you may be eligible then to apply through what we call interview waiver, where you don't have to come and stand in line and do your interview, and you send in all of your documents, and you can receive your visa that way. So that's what she's talking about. Right now, we have a shorter waiting time for people to send in their documents than we had in the past. It's about 3.5 weeks currently. So if you go through the application process now, the current waiting time is around 3 weeks for you to get the instruction that you're able then to send in your documents. Once you do that, we're normally able to process that in a couple of weeks and then get everything back to you. And again, but that time frame is always moving, and it always shifts, and it depends on demand and the number of appointments we have scheduled in person, and it depends on the number of people who are using that process at any given time. So that can move. It's not a hard and fast guarantee. So that's why we really do like to encourage people to plan far in advance and make sure that you start that renewal process early so that you're able to get your visa back before it's time for you to travel.
So it sounds like if I am eligible for the interview waiver process, I should expect maybe up to 2 months at this time.
Right now,
from
yeah,
when
6
I
weeks
apply
to 2 months,
when
6
I
to
get my
9 weeks
passport.
sounds like a good time frame right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if I either apply for the interview waiver process or I apply to be seen in person?
Right.
And I feel as though I need to travel sooner because I have some sort of emergency. Do you know what the process is for requesting an expedited appointment?
Yeah, of course, I do. So the process is you're gonna request what we call an expedited appointment. Again, in our appointment system, there is a space for you to do that, to request an expedited appointment, and then there's a place for you to give the reasons why you need to have that your appointment move forward, either in the interview waiver process, which means you've sent it in and we go and find it a little sooner and move it to the front of the queue, or you have an appointment that's been scheduled and it's down the road and you need to come in sooner. generally right now we're very busy, and so those are being approved really for urgent humanitarian travel is the most common reason that those are being approved. And so an urgent medical emergency, sometimes a death in the immediate family, or something else like that. Some other very important reason that you have the need to travel immediately. And so, but again, so anyone's free to use that expedited appointment request feature, and then you'll get a response back fairly quickly, whether or not that's been approved or not. If it's not approved, that doesn't cancel your appointment. You just continue with your appointment as normal. Yeah,
and that's important. Your regular appointment isn't canceled.
Exactly.
And if I am approved, I will be expected to bring sort of documentation of the reasons. That I put in that request.
Right.
So also, this is reminding me that just a quick announcement, please note that as of 4 days ago, the non-immigrant application processing fee increased from $160 to $185 for B1, B2, and a variety of other, but not all non-immigrant visas. So those fee increases we talked about last month on Facebook Live were postponed by a couple of weeks, but they are now in place. So don't be surprised when you go and make an appointment now that the fee has increased a little bit. And speaking of paying fees, also, please note that when you go to pay a visa fee, that will be paid through SEAC.gov. It won't be paid through pay.gov. The only service that our consular section provides where you pay a fee on pay.gov is passport services. So if you're applying for a visa, please pay for the fee through SEAC.gov. Otherwise, it may take up to 2 months to get your money back if you use the wrong mechanism to pay that fee. So, all right. Here is another question for you, Stephen.
Cool.
I would like to apply for a visiting visa, but I'm afraid to do so because I did before and got turned down. Can I apply again? And what are my chances of getting it this time?
Sure. So definitely you can apply again if you are refused you can apply again at any time.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are familiar, I think in Jamaica, a lot of people have been refused for visas in past and then have had a visa approved later on. That's not an uncommon scenario at all. And so if you were, whatever reason your visa was refused the first time, you just need to simply be prepared to demonstrate why you are no longer ineligible for that same reason. And so for most people in Jamaica, we talked about immigrant intent or your ties to Jamaica. A lot of people have, you're familiar, you've gotten a green sheet and you've read that information. It might seem a little intimidating or a little bit confusing, but it's really not. And you can apply again at any time and just be prepared to demonstrate why now you're eligible for the visa. People's circumstances change all the time. And so just because you weren't eligible in the past doesn't mean you're not today.
Okay. So we have a few questions, and this is great because technically that is the theme for today about student visas.
Cool.
So I'm going to pivot back to that. I am Nakisha on Facebook says, I'm applying for an F1 visa. What kinds of documents should I bring to the interview?
Okay, so the most important one, of course, you're like everyone else, you're going to have your DS-160 form with your barcode on it that you got when you made your application. So you're going to bring that just like anybody else. You're also going to have what we call an I-20 form, which is been prepared by the university or the college or the school in the U.S. And so you will have received that. And that's an official looking kind of document, and it has your name and where you're going to school and what you're going to study. You're going to bring your SEVIS receipt. So there's another fee that has to be paid, and you'll bring a receipt for the SEVIS program. And then for an F1 specifically, we ask that you bring some information that's going to relate to how you're going to be able to pay for the course that you've signed up for. And so that may be a variety of things. It could be a scholarship. It could be funds from the school. It could be family funds. And so you just need to bring evidence in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, OJ on Facebook is asking, I have a visitor's visa and a student visa. So back to the theme from before. but I want to visit the school a few weeks before school starts. Do I enter on my student visa or on my visiting visa?
Sure. So if you, so there is a window of time that you can enter on your student visa before school starts, before your program start date. And that's slightly different if you have a J visa versus an F visa. And I don't want to get bogged down in all of the details, but you can enter on your student visa before that. If you have a visiting visa and you're going to enter before your window of starting, then again, that's something that's going to be handled at the port of entry at the airport when you arrive in the United States, and you're going to explain that to them. However, if you are changing status then while you're moving from a visiting visa status to a student status while you're in the US, then that's going to be an application that you have to make to the Department of Homeland Security, to USCIS, from within the United States when you do that. It's possible. It's a little more complicated. Most students enter within that kind of 30-day time period before the start of their program start date on their I-20.
Yeah, which makes sense. And the question was a few weeks. So OJ, I think if I were you, and it's just a couple of weeks, enter on the student visa. All right, there is an IV question. I might take it.
Oh, well, let's see. All
right. Leonie on Facebook is asking, if Andrews has no vaccine, do we have to ask for a medical clearance or waiver? What do we do?
I'm going to let you take that.
Okay. So there has been a lot of chatter about vaccines, specifically the COVID vaccine. And the answer to this question is that applicants have to speak directly to Andrews about any sort of vaccination requirements, clearances, or waivers. Generally speaking, if a vaccine is that is required for an IV, for an immigrant visa, is totally unavailable for 6 months or longer in Jamaica, then Andrews will initiate the process of requesting a waiver. That happens very, very rarely. Typically within 6 months of being seen by Andrews, a vaccine will become available and you will be asked to take that vaccine in order to meet the immigrant visa requirements. But ultimately, it's between the applicant and Andrews to resolve vaccination issues, and officers like myself doing interviews won't have answers for you on specific vaccine requirements and how that looks like. So. All right, let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. Chad on Twitter is asking, I applied to renew my visa through the mail, and I got my passport back with a letter that says I need to schedule an interview. What does this mean?
Sure. So whatever it means, it could be for a variety of reasons. And so really all it means is that for some reason, when the interview was being, or when the application was being reviewed, the officer determined that you needed to come in for an interview. It could be for some additional questions that weren't covered in your application form. It could be for fingerprints, because we have to be able to reuse fingerprints. It could be for a variety of reasons. So it's not necessarily anything to worry about. But again, you're just going to come now for like a normal visa interview. And yeah, like I said, we do those every day. You're going to go online. You're going to be released to schedule yourself an appointment in the future. So you go and you schedule your own appointment at a time that's convenient to you, and just come for a normal interview like you would have in the past. Yeah. Okay,
great. Thank you. All right. I have a few announcements from some other sections. The American Citizen Services section wanted to remind our viewers that hurricane season is upon us, runs through November 30th, and that it's not too late to start preparing for this. Keep up to date on potential storms by checking nhc.noaa.gov. Develop an evacuation plan. Also, the Jamaican Government's Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management website, odpem.org.jm, has a map of shelter locations throughout the island. Assemble a supply of 3 days worth of food, water, and medications in case you have to shelter in place. Create a communications plan with your family to make sure you have access to important telephone numbers, even if your own phone stops working. We are on a tropical island. What was it? Hurricane Brett recently. I heard some talk about that. Hopefully it will avoid the island completely, but we are in that hurricane season. So, All right. We have another question for you.
Okay.
Omar on Facebook is asking, what is the wait time for visa interviews? How do I find out what the current wait time is?
Okay, so two-parter. Actually, the second part is the easiest to answer, and you can get the most up-to-date information if you go to a website called travel.state.gov. So it's travel.state.gov. You search for U.S. visa. You look, there's a button there for U.S. visas, and you click the J for Jamaica. You get, Japan, Jamaica, and it will give you the up-to-date wait times for all the different visa categories. Each visa category that we offer has a different wait time. And so it's difficult to say this is the wait time. For students, we have appointments available in the next few weeks. For certain teachers, for some work categories, they could be available in the next few weeks. For our visiting visa wait times, right now, they're just a couple of months out. And again, but different appointments are being added to the schedule regularly. So the best information to give to people, the best advice is to continue to check the appointment calendar on a regular basis so that you can schedule the appointment you need. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And speaking of travel.state.gov, just wanted to put a plug in for the STEP program. STEP is an acronym. It stands for Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. And visitors to Jamaica are encouraged to enroll in the STEP program. It's basically the way that our American Citizen Services Unit and this embassy communicates with American citizens that are visiting or considering travel to Jamaica. So if there is something happening on the island that would be beneficial for U.S. citizens to know about, they would be notified through the STEP program. So travel.state.gov is the place where you go to enroll in that, as well as to look for visa appointments. So, all right. Here we go. There are a lot of questions. So yes, I know this suspense is killing you. Okay. Hold on a second. All right. Okay, so we're going to pivot back to the F visa category, the student visa category.
Yep.
What kinds of financial documents do I have to bring to the interview to show that I can pay for school?
Yeah, so in your I-20 form, so for somebody who's applying for an F visa, you should be familiar with the I-20. And right in there, it's gonna outline from the school. We'll put in there exactly what kind of financial resources are required to attend the school. And so you can bring whatever you need to bring to be able to convince someone and demonstrate that you've got the resources that are there. So again, a lot of students have a scholarship, a full scholarship, a partial scholarship. They have funds from the school. And so they're going to bring some documents to that effect. But most of the time, those fees are being paid by a family member. And so you're going to want to bring the bank statements, tax returns, financial documents, letters of guarantee, whatever it is that you're going to be able to demonstrate and convince that you've got the funds to be able to pay for that. There's no there's no checklist. There's no one set of documents that do the trick every time. And so it's the whole package, but you're responsible for demonstrating that you have the funds available to pay for that year of school.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so not exactly F students, but a question about the internship visa from Shireen on YouTube. What is the earliest date I can interview for the internship visa? Can you talk a little bit more about the requirements for this type of visa? Okay,
yeah. So there is a type of visa called it's a type of what we call a J1 visa. Right now, I should say that what we're not doing right now are summer work and travel visas. We have thousands and thousands, literally thousands of Jamaicans right now are in the U.S. who are university students here, and they've gotten their visas over the past several months. And they are in the U.S. right now working for the summer, earning money and working usually in hospitality kind of industry jobs all around the United States, gaining really great work experience and making friends and having a good time. And they'll be back at university in the fall. So that's one kind of J1 program. there are a number of different J1 programs, but one of them, like I said, is an internship. So for an intern, you would need to secure an internship in the U.S. in the field that you're studying or have recently graduated in. So it's either you're currently studying or you've graduated within the past 12 months. And then you secure an internship to work in that field. There are different requirements in different industries about exactly the kinds of work that you can do and the kinds of you're meant to learn about the job that you've studied and rotate through different parts of an organization and gain work experience. And so as soon as you have a DS 2019 form that is been issued for an internship program, then you'd be able to start looking for internship appointments in the calendar and schedule that, generally within the 3 or 4 months or so before your internship begins. But that's another great program, a collaboration between employers in the United States and educational institutions here in Jamaica.
And it sounds like, I guess, the answer to when I can schedule is it's a rolling basis, because
so
it depends on when you can secure that
Exactly.
internship, and has it been less than 12 months since I graduated? And
and those
am I?
internships they don't start all at exactly the same time.
Right,
So our summer work
exactly.
and travel program, that happens during the summer, right? And so that's during a fixed time. But the internships happen throughout the year on a rolling basis, and that's really between the employer and the school here. Yeah.
All right, we're going to switch to the H2 visa class.
Yeah,
Glenn
another big
Roy, yeah, a very big one for Jamaica. Glenn Roy on YouTube is asking, I'm an H2 farm worker. I've gone to the US every year for a long time to work. I don't have my visa for this season yet. Do I have to come in to the embassy to renew, or can I do it through the mail?
Sure. So Glenn Roy, great question. As long as certain people are eligible for interview waiver program, like we were talking about with our visitor visas as well. So we do H2s through interview waiver as well. Most people are eligible for interview waiver. They can do it through the mail if you have a valid petition, right? And so you need to work with your employer, with your recruiter, and make sure that you're on a valid petition to be able to work this season in the U.S. The majority of times people are eligible for interview waiver. The time when you should let your employer, your recruiter know that you're not, is when you've made an application for a U.S. visa that's been refused, and that's been the last application that you made has been refused. All right. So if you were refused years ago in the past and you've had visa since then, that's fine. We can do interview waiver. But let's say you came in for a visiting visa this year and that was refused. Now for your next H2A or H2B, you'll need to come for an interview. But most people are eligible to do that through the mail, and you're going to work with your recruiter and your employer to make sure you're on a petition. And we turn those around really quickly. There's not a waiting period, I should mention. Like we have for our visiting visas, there's not a waiting period for H2 visas. So as soon as that comes in, we receive it a few days after it's dropped off, and we get it back, sent back out a few days later. So that's a very quick turnaround.
As far as I understand, the H visas take priority over the visiting visas.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
so as soon as they come in, they're
exactly. There's not a waiting period for them, and as soon as we receive them, we're able to get them back, usually in a matter of days. Of course. Like everyone knows, there are individual cases that might take longer for a variety of reasons, but in the vast majority of cases, they get out really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to just do a couple more questions. Time has flown. Let's see. Oh my gosh, we're at 28 minutes. Okay. Last question.
Let's keep it going all day.
All right. I mean, this is basically what we do all afternoon.
Exactly. We're talking about this all day.
All right. What if I am in the U.S. on a visitor's visa, but I want to or need to stay after my authorized until date? How do I apply for an extension of stay in the U.S.? That's Sherry on Twitter. I'm just going to add another one. What is an authorized until date? What is an AUD?
Yep.
Stephen, tell us. And if I need to stay afterwards, what do I do?
Sure. So important things about your visa, right? Your expiration date on your visa is not the date you can stay until. Your expiration date is the last date you can enter the U.S. Yes. But when you enter the U.S., when you make it through and you've gotten off the airplane and you talk to that person in the booth and they stamp your passport, or you look in the screen, whatever you do, they're going to they're going to give you an authorized until date. And so sometimes that's in the form of a stamp. Sometimes now we're not stamping passports anymore, but you can ask, what is my authorized until date? There's a website that you can go to now and find that information if you put in your own passport information, your passport information that the Department of Homeland Security provides. But all of that is done not by us in the embassy. That's done by CBP, by our border protection, and they are the ones who determine the authorized until date. And that is the date that you have to leave the United States by that date. You're authorized to stay until that day.
Makes sense.
And so many times on a B1, B2 visa, that might be 6 months. That doesn't mean that you always should stay 6 months, but that is usually the authorized until date. And then at that point, if you're going to be beyond that, then you're going to need to file an application before that date with USCIS.
Which is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services.
That's exactly right. So United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, it's a part of DHS. There's so many letters.
Yes, there are. And we work with them, but not for them.
Yeah, so so many letters. It's part of DHS, the Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
But those are all things that I think are easily Googleable, if that's a word. You can search that.
Search it up.
Search and find USCIS, extension of status in the US.
Yes.
How do I make the application? You're going to go and do that online. There's a fee. You're going to have to fill in forms. You're going to have to pay money. And as long as you've done that before you're authorized until date, then that's really what they're looking for to keep you in status in the US. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's going to be our last question.
Cool.
We are at 31 minutes.
All right.
And thank you very much, Stephen, for taking time out of your afternoon to hang out with us. Thank you, audience members, for taking time out of your afternoon to hang out with us. This has been a great session. Have a lovely afternoon and a great weekend when it comes. Bye.